This season, the Knicks, they had a roster that was good enough to get them to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, but will this Knicks squad be good enough for next season? That's a major question among others that we're going to try to answer with the great Knicks beat writer for the New York Post, my guy Stefan Bondy, who is now in off-season mode. Steph, earlier I talked about how you're in playoff mode, you're in off-season mode, but there's never really an off-season with the NBA, so how you doing?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there isn't. I mean, you can jump. When is the draft? It's like in 2 weeks or something crazy like that. So you're right. There's no off season, and with the Knicks, and I appreciate it because there's so much interest in this team that there's always questions about what's next. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, after this for you, I don't think I talked to you about this. This was your first conference finals that you've covered with the team for sure, but it's the first conference finals you've covered, period, correct, too?
No, I've
Okay.
I've covered a bunch of finals and conference finals, none involving the local teams, but one probably the best game I've ever covered was 2016 Game 7 between the Warriors and the Cavs. So I was at that one.
That's a legendary game in NBA history. So, Steph, fresh off of a playoff run in your most recent column, you highlighted Mikal Bridges as one of the most
hmm
pressing decisions this offseason for the Knicks. Do you see extending Bridges as a no-brainer here for the Knicks, or are there legitimate reasons for the Knicks that they should be cautious about extending Bridges?
Yeah, I mean it's a no-brainer. Here's the deal. He's eligible for an extension of 4 years, something in the range of 156 million, as soon as the NBA Finals is over. If the Knicks decide that they want Mikal Bridges, they're not going to use him as a trade chip, then it is a no-brainer. You don't want him to get to free agency where you could have him pay more money, where he could absolutely leave in free agency. You traded 5 first-round picks for him. I think, the extension is a more reasonable number. It would be the same exact number that Jalen Brunson signed as his extension instead of going to free agency. I think for the Knicks, it would make the most sense, assuming they don't want to use Mikal Bridges as a trade chip to sign him to the extension.
All right, so it looks like the Knicks could be bringing him back with an extension. He does have a year left on his deal. They could extend on top of that. Now, I want to talk to what some of the chatter is around the Knicks right now. And I know you've been paying attention to social media, and some Knicks fans, they're looking for a fall guy here to blame for the Knicks losing to the Pacers. And the two most prominent names that we've seen, Steph, are head coach Tom Thibodeau and big man karl-Anthony Towns. Do you think that both guys should and or will be back with the team next season?
Yeah, but and talking about fall guys, and I think this is where Leon Rose and the Knicks organization are missing the mark because you just had this great season, where the first time in 25 years you got to the conference finals. You won 51 games with a new core. You beat the defending champs in the second round. And yet everything since that point, I'm talking about the media coverage and the narrative surrounding it and the fan base has been exceedingly negative. And, this is where Leon Rose could, you know, jump, change the narrative, jump in front of the narrative and hold a press conference like every other team does after the season, and where you accentuate the positives, you back your coach, you back karl-Anthony Towns, who was your former client when you were a power agent. But the Knicks are they might be the only team. I haven't done a tally of every team, but I think they're the only team that has no media availability after the season ends. So we're not going to hear from Leon Rose. We're going to hear today from the GM, the president, Tim Connolly, the guy, for the Timberwolves, where they had a disappointing season, not a disappointing season, where they similarly lost in the conference final. He's going to talk today, but we're not going to hear from Leon Rose, and I think that's kind of a big mistake given where all the narratives have gone, because that would be his opportunity to kind of shift that, and we're not going to hear from him.
Yeah, we're not. I think you make a fantastic point about the fact we do not hear from the team president on these matters, particularly following the season. It would be nice to hear some positive. Not saying that the ending wasn't
Mhm.
disappointing for the Knicks, but I am in agreement with you. The season overall was a huge positive. And you can back it up. You were somebody who told me at the start of the season this season would be successful if they reach the Eastern Conference Finals, and they did.
Yeah, that's the part I don't understand is, all right, they go into the playoffs with this narrative of, all right, if you get to the conference finals, that's the goal. You were built to beat the Boston Celtics. They beat the Boston Celtics. So now all of a sudden the narrative is fire the coach and they need to blow up the roster. If you realistically look at the Eastern Conference right now, it's totally wide open. Jason Tatum's not going to be playing probably for the whole year. Giannis Antetokounmpo might go out west. Um, and you have, Cleveland definitely looks vulnerable. Certainly, they have to prove themselves in the playoffs. And Indiana would be number one going into next season, and the Knicks are number two. And I think that's a good position to be in. And so, if you add depth to the roster, and they're going to have a $5.7 million exception that they can use, I think that's a good place to start.
I absolutely agree. Now, with all that, I think they are in a good position. I'm with you, Steph. But some fans, they're clamoring for the Knicks to trade for a big name star to improve the roster. Are Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kevin Durant, KD, are they realistic trade options for the Knicks? And would acquiring either player actually make the Knicks better here?
Yeah, so I have there are problems with both those players you bring up. The first one, Giannis Antetokounmpo, barring Milwaukee saying we love Karl-Anthony Towns so much that we want to take him back as a centerpiece in um in a deal with for our best player ever. I don't see a reason why Milwaukee would ever do that deal. They would have to view, I guess, Carl in the same light that the Dallas Mavericks viewed Anthony Davis when they traded Luka Doncic, and the reason being the Knicks just don't have any draft picks to trade Milwaukee, and they depleted their assets to build the team that they have now. So if there were ever a bidding war, the Knicks would lose that for Giannis. And the problem with Kevin Durant is he makes over, I think, $50 million a year. So to get him, you'd have to trade like a combination of you'd have to want it would either have to be Karl-Anthony Towns, which, I don't know if the Phoenix Suns want, or it would have to be a combination of like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, or Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart. And then it's like, well, you're trading for a 36-year-old who has been injury prone, and you need to get through a regular season. And you have Mikal Bridges, who's a minutes eater, and you have OG Anunoby, who you need defensively on the wing, and you're trading him for a guy that might not be available a lot. So I just don't understand I understand you get Kevin Durant in the playoffs. He's still Kevin Durant. He's still one of the best players of all time offensively. But I just don't think they can be able to get to that position if they make that trade.
Yeah, I don't think so. It also would kill their depth a ton, as you just mentioned, which is the next thing that I'm going to go to because, Steph, I think this team could benefit from adding some depth pieces this offseason. Should adding depth be the priority this summer for the Knicks, and are there any names in free agency that you think the Knicks could target this offseason to improve the lack of depth that we saw from them this season?
Yeah, I mean that should be the key thing, and that can come in a few ways. One is that $5.7 million trade exception, and not trade exception, mid-level exception. And remember, they have this mid-level exception, and give Jalen Brunson credit because he took that discount. If Jalen Brunson had waited until free agency this year to sign that deal instead of signing the extension, he'd be making about 11 or $12 million more next season than he is. And the Knicks would be in the second apron. And they wouldn't have that exception. And they wouldn't have some of the maneuverability they do have to fill out the depth. So I think there's a certain responsibility that the Knicks should feel towards Jalen Brunson, frankly, to improve this team. And that includes that exception where, let's say somebody, I know he's a veteran and he's old now, but Al Horford. Maybe Al Horford doesn't want to, maybe Al Horford looking at the Boston Celtics situation and says, you know what, this is going to be a bad off year for them, the kind of a transition year. Um, maybe I want to go to the Knicks, somebody like that. Other way you can build depth is through internal development, and the Knicks have 3 second-round picks last year who need to take that next step. I'm talking about Tyler Kolek, Pacome Dadier, and Ariel Hook-Porty. So those are the two ways that you can really build this depth. I don't anticipate certainly Precious Achiuwa coming back. Probably not Landry Shamet. The PJ Tucker has a team option that the Knicks will decline, and who am I forgetting?
Campaign.
Campaign. Yeah, I mean his end of the playoffs kind of sent the signal that he's not coming back either.
Yeah, So you think a lot of the Knicks free agents that they have not coming back. But you mentioned something that I want to get into, Steph, because in this world with the second apron, which the Knicks are below right now, you look around the league, the elite teams in the league, they've been able to win on the margins, right? And that's finding low-cost players who can crack the rotation and contribute. How important will it be to watch the internal development that you just mentioned of the Knicks young players this summer, and which young player of the guys you mentioned Kolek, Purdy, and Dadier, which of those three do you think is the best chance to have an impact next season with this Knickerbocker team?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Dadier. I think he has listen, he was very green last season. He was a teenager when he was drafted, but I think if you look at the potential there, as you look at his size and his ability to shoot from outside, I think he's the guy I would circle as this is the guy that we can really develop into something. Obviously, Tyler Kolek is great with the ball and distributing and seeing the floor as a floor general. Defensively, he has his issues, but I think if you look at the overall potential, I think Pacome Dadi is number one.
All right, I like that. We saw him last year in Summer League. We'll see what he can do. Expected to play this summer in Vegas. Last thing for me, Steph, and look, a lot of Knicks fans will want to fill the blank that I'm going to ask you here in a variety of different ways, but fill in the blank here for me. This Knicks offseason will be successful if blank happens. So what is to happen for the offseason to be a success for the New York Knicks?
Um, yeah, I mean it's hard to say. I think if they build out a bench, listen, it's going to be a hard sell to sell somebody like I mentioned, Horford. It's going to be hard to sell anybody, with any pedigree if they look at the opportunity and say, well, why would I want to join this team if you have a starting five and those guys play 38 minutes and I'm the bench as the least played minutes of any bench in the NBA? Why would I join that? So it's going to be a tough sell. I think that's kind of where Tom Thibodeau has to adjust. And he does. When Tom has had legitimate players on the bench, he used them. I don't think he ever trusted the bench of this year. So it would be a success if the Knicks get a bench player that is willing to come here, that kind of takes that. It's going to have to be some sort of discount because you want a player that's better than the minimum, and that Tom Thibodeau trusts and be able to fill out the bench because you see the Pacers, they killed the Knicks with depth. And so I think it's a success if the Knicks build out the depth and get players that Tom Thibodeau trusts and will be willing to use.
I agree. I think that's logical. I think that should be the number one priority for this team this offseason. But we'll see. It is the offseason, although it doesn't feel like Steph is ever off because, as he said, the draft starting up in 2 weeks, then the Summer League. Basketball never stops, Steph. You know that. But we appreciate you. Get some rest while you can. We will talk to you soon about this Knicks offseason. Appreciate you, man.